Kaimere is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Kaimere. The first apes came to Kaimere from Central Asia as the harvest triggered by the extinction which followed the return of titanosaurs to the known world. Although the world prior to the Titans would have been far more amicable to these little arboreal specialists, they quickly populated the dense coastal and wetland jungles that the Titans generally avoided. While watery habitats weren't their preference back home, being generally poor swimmers, those who adjusted to the water quickly found widespread success, in many cases outcompeting the established New World monkeys. Flying lemurs, a derived clade of adapiforms that came with the Titans, dominated the open forests of the Titan Gardens to this day, but for a few million years, small apes enjoyed unprecedented success, with many species on both continents and most large islands. Apes were among the earliest fauna to island hop from mainland Arvel across the Kalin Sea over to Picardia around 8 million years ago. Although it was at first assumed to have been on the backs of megalonychid sloths, fossil apes uncovered from this time show a number of aquatic adaptations, and it is now believed that they swam on their own. Simiomorph sloths were already well adapted to the Titan Gardens and lowland forests. To avoid this competition, some of the apes took to the dense coastal jungles, while others ventured into the highlands, where they had to compete with flightless tapajarids indigenous to the island. While the coastal apes fell to competition with macaques many millions of years later, one of the highland species endured, which we will get to in the segment on modern taxa. The mainland apes primarily remained small and in coastal or wetland jungles. The fluctuating climate extended and decreased their habitat many times throughout this tumultuous period between 8 and 6 million years ago, an era defined by spikes and drops in humidity. There were many localized extinctions at the time, and the apes of Arvel in particular underwent dramatic population bottlenecks of the dominant species. Many strange and wondrous ape species evolved during this time, including several giants, although they and many other large browsers were outcompeted by the arrival of mylodont sloths 6 million years ago. It was not until the Pleistocene that a new harvest of apes arrived, this time from Southeast Asia. Gibbons competed directly with the smaller ape species of the coastal jungles of Arvel and Nikar. For reasons unknown, perhaps owing to disease, gibbons rapidly replaced most of the small apes of the Arvelith jungles, but were unable to establish themselves in Nikar. 3 large apes also came from the Pleistocene harvest, 2 species of pongo related to the modern orangutan, and Gigantopithecus, the largest ape to ever evolve on Earth. While Homo erectus was also brought to the known world during this harvest, the human species of Kaimere will not be covered in this episode. The most recent full harvest was from Central and Northern Africa 250,000 years ago. Many species of ape were included in this harvest. This was when the ancestors of Chimerans came through. Pertinent to this episode were several species of chimpanzee and gorilla. Picardia proved too cold, and those apes replicated in these temperate jungles quickly died off. Gorillas went extinct shortly after their introduction to the continents due to inadequate food and habitat. Chimpanzees were introduced to both Nikar and Arvel. As happened with gibbons, chimps failed to establish themselves in the northern continent. They were too large to survive in the dense wetland jungles where gibbons thrived. The Titan Gardens of Arvel proved better habitat, but there wasn't enough food for a large population, and the Rukel parrot and indigenous apes were their main competition. While the Arvelith speak of violent, man-sized apes with dark fur, no chimpanzees have been recorded in modern times. Rumors and a few pelts and bones suggest a relic population may persist in the forests west of the known world, but again, this may represent an extinct population. The Great Library lists chimpanzees as likely extinct but unconfirmed. There is evidence of chimpanzee and a few homunculi, so it appears that they may have held on in Qajar before the culling of the peninsula by the first children eventually brought their extinction in the known world. Another ape present in Qajar, this one among the largest found in Kaimere. All were slain in the culling by the first children, save for a few specimens collected for homunculi. Based on the few remaining skeletons, namely one preserved in a cave to the north, they were particularly massive species of Gigantopithecus. Like Gigantopithecus found in the windward highlands of Arvel, they fed primarily on tough, low-growing vegetation and seem to have been one of the most common large herbivores in the wetter forests to the east before the first children wiped them out. Big cats are, as on Earth, the most frequent predators of apes. Although big cats are generally smaller and more arboreal on Kaimere, they still readily bring down apes up to twice their size with regularity. The red panther, common in the dense and wetland jungles, is a particularly prolific killer of apes. Although the strength of apes is quite exaggerated, they can still defend themselves from many predators, yet even Gigantopithecus of the Arvel highlands can be brought down by red panthers and Homotherium. Several dinosaurs predate upon apes, although their rarity in denser habitats does mean that it's not as common. Even the largest apes are not safe from cockatrices, young oritaku, and terror birds they share their habitat with. Originating in the north, but now dominating both continents, a clade of apes unique to Kaimere has blossomed into a thriving group of animals occupying a wide range of niches. They are often lumped with gibbons, but while they may have their closest relatives on Earth, these apes are only distantly related to them. This clade is often called the white-armed or gloved gibbons, as the surviving species almost all have gloves and stockings of white fur. Most are small and brachiate like gibbons. They are astonishingly fast, with some species brachiating at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, which enables them to evade most predators that they spot. There are many species on Nikar, but only the golden ape is present in the Arvelith jungles. With their larger size, puts them at a distinct niche from the true gibbons. Their cousin, the water ape, is a proficient swimmer and common in wetland jungles. They have webbed digits and can swim for many hours before tiring, helping them populate the many islands of the known world. The common monkey, a species of macaque, has outcompeted them in much of their former range, but the water ape is still present in appreciable numbers beyond the known world. The garden ape is in many ways analogous to chimpanzees in size, niche, and diet. They are not as aggressive or predatory, which appears to have been of benefit to them in avoiding competition. The garden ape is, as their name implies, quite common in the Titan gardens of both continents. They live in massive networks of small matriarchal groups, and males leave when they come of age. While they do knuckle walk, they most often walk bipedally, especially in the march between food sources, but they are faster on all fours and will shift to a knuckle crawl when they flee predators. Largest of the gloved gibbons, and indeed tied for second place of all Chimeran apes, is the buffalo ape. Little is known of them, although they are found in the jungles of both continents. Their evolution coincides with the disappearance of the browsing calicotheres, and it appears that they stepped up to the niche when mylodont sloths came to the known world. They share habitat with several sloth species, specializing in fruit and higher foliage to avoid competition. Although present on both continents, they are more common in the Nikari forests. Arvel is populated by far more recent apes. There are over a dozen species of gibbon in the jungles beyond the known world. Although it once had many species, there are no non-human apes in Qajar. Although 2 orangutan species were harvested, only the smaller has modern descendants. Being more arboreal gives them an edge over the larger orangutan and African apes. They are common in the dense jungles of both coasts and the inland sea, although decidedly more common in Arvel. In the highlands of Arvel, Gigantopithecus is present in relative abundance. They are called tukudu, or the giant ape. The forests of this habitat are on quite uneven terrain, and the titans are not common, so the forests are much more dense. They share this forest habitat with giant elephants, Hugolor sloths, common drakes, kotor drakes, deer, and Hugor calicotheres. There is some niche overlap, but the giant ape tends to focus on a mix of fruit and bamboo and leave the ferns, grassy meadows, and leaves to other megafaunal herbivores in their habitat. They are tied with the buffalo ape in terms of size. Both are of comparable mass, but Gigantopithecus is stockier and often a bit heavier, while the buffalo ape is taller. Both, however, are far outclassed by the angaru of the Picardian highlands. This ape, the great sage, is the last relic of Picardian water apes that crossed the Caline Sea 8 million years ago. Females are only slightly smaller than males of the buffalo and giant apes, and males dwarf them, weighing over a ton. Like the buffalo ape, their limbs have become quite columnar to help efficiently bear their massive weight. The hind feet of males are in many ways more similar to those of sloths than a gorilla or orangutan that they superficially resemble, yet like all ancient Chimeran apes, they are technically closest to gibbons than any of the great apes of Earth. They are bulk feeders, thriving on a verdant forest surrounding the Great Lakes. As the climate of Picardia is generally consistent, with a brief dry season in the summer, they don't need to travel much to sustain themselves. They live in large matrilineal troops of related females, led by the eldest female and protected by a single giant male who is their shared partner. Females are as aggressive, if not more so, in driving off males who are not theirs. As males who have not mated do not have the long mane, nor are quite the size of mated males, they can be reliably driven off. The troop's mate will live with the same troop for 10 years or so, and since paternity is fairly certain, he takes an active role in their parenting. I discuss at length the parenting in my episode on RK selection theory, in which 15 to 20 years of care for a few offspring makes the angaru an exemplar of extreme K selection, a reproductive strategy which has worked quite well for these uncommon but durable colossal apes. Between Oritaku megaraptorans and Weochetuka abelisaurids, they are not without predators, which has prompted a number of physical defenses around the heart of their territory, and tools which they employ as weapons when the need arises. The angaru is quite intelligent, and the Highlanders claim that they have their own language and readily learn Picardian hand signs, although scholars are quite skeptical of these claims. The Highlanders say there's an entire Picardian clan affiliated with these apes, and according to the folklore of many peoples of the Great Lakes, the witch Garochate has a familiar that is a particularly large male. The angaru is a notoriously reclusive ape, rarely seen by outsiders, but the resonant songs of males reaffirming their territory is one of the defining components of the chorus that distinguish the Picardian highlands. Although not especially common in the known world itself, so Chimerans aren't as familiar with apes as they are with other monkeys, apes are quite successful in the forests beyond the known world. As they do for us, apes remind Chimerans that they are not nearly so distinct from other beasts as they sometimes like to claim. Back in June, Grisat sponsored an episode on monkeys and Chimere. Apes were excluded from that discussion since, despite arguably being a type of monkey, they are derived and distinct enough that I felt they warranted their own episode. Chimerans see this distinction too. Even though Cercopithecid or Old World monkeys are relatives of apes, they are usually lumped in with the flat-nosed or New World monkeys, and apes are considered their own group. Cheers to Gazette for your support in this episode. It was a delight from start to finish. Thank you all for watching, and my deepest thanks to my patrons for your support. Cheers, folks!